Coming up on today's Minnesota Sports Rankem, the top 5 future superstars in Minnesota sports. That's next.
This is Minnesota Sports Rankem, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
It's the show that settles debates and starts new ones. It's Minnesota Sports Rankem on Locked On Sports Minnesota, your Thursday staple. Myself, Sam Ekstrom, at Sam Ekstrom, also part of the Ron Johnson Show, also part of the Minnesota Football Party here on the network, joined by Luke Inman, right-hand man, at Luke_Spinman on Twitter, NFL Draft Buzz newsletter author on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe to that for free. He's Luke Inman. Welcome in, my man.
Always good to be here, Sam. You know, every Wednesday afternoon, I check my email, see what we're going to be talking about today, and I love it. You know, I perched up in my seat a little bit, just being the big NFL draft guy that I am. I love talking about the next wave of up-and-coming prospects because I think it gives fans some hope, some excitement for the future. No matter how good or bad your team is at any given moment, there's always some guys you can get excited about. So I'm excited to unveil another top 5 today and compare and contrast our lists.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some good variance there. This list today, the top 5 future superstars in Minnesota sports, inspired by these recent draft picks. You know, the Wolves have added Jalen Clark, Leonard Miller. The Wild last night in the first round added Rosemount's Charlie Stramel to the mix. A lot of people actually questioning that pick. Maybe that's for the roundtable on Friday. But we're going to talk about future superstars on today's show, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started today. Find us for free. Also, folks, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, free on YouTube. Hammer that subscribe button. Help us get to 6,000 subscribers. Can we get there by football season? Let's set that as the goal. It's coming up fast, just a month away from Vikings training camp. So loose criteria for this list, Luke. I kind of laid out the parameters for you, but obviously there's a little wiggle room. But I'm thinking prospects definitely eligible, rookies definitely eligible, and then young players that haven't really made their stamp yet with the professional team, but are kind of on the rise or expected to take a big leap, would also be eligible for future star status. I always start with you, Luke, the guest. So give me your number 5. Set the table for your list.
Yeah, this was tough. Again, you took JJ and Kaprizov off the list. Even a guy like Christian Darrisaw, I thought, he's kind of established at this point. Number 5 on my list. I think you're going to be impressed with me, Sam, because I'm starting out with some good old-fashioned Minnesota hockey. Did you know the Athletics' Scott Wheeler came out with his top NHL prospect rankings for each team a few months ago? Your Minnesota Wild ranked number 1 on the list for the entire NHL when it comes to the best group of young players. I had no idea the Wild were that stacked with top shelf prospects and have been building a nice little young core and nucleus for the future. That got me really jacked up for the future here for the Wild in Minnesota. Anyways, he goes on to mention the Minnesota Wild currently have the number 1 goalie prospect on the planet right now, Jesper Wallstedt, one of the cleanest, best goalie prospects this guy has ever seen in his life. And he said he's got all the makings of a true number 1 starter in the NHL. So Jesper Wallstedt, write that name down if you haven't already. The Wild may have a future stud shutdown goalie behind net someday in the not so distant future. Jesper Wallstedt. How about that, Sam?
Hey, you claim not to be a hockey guy. You just nailed my number 5 on my list. It's Jesper. Way. It's the 20-year-old Swede. First round pick, 2021. You look at his stats in Sweden, insane. Don't know always how it's going to translate. Came to the States, played for AHL Iowa last year, and performed really well. Not blowing you away on the stat sheet, but he hasn't done anything to diminish his stock. He is not even legal drinking age yet. The guy is the future in net for the Wild, and that's why they're in a tricky spot, because remember, Philip Gustafson was supposed to be just a stopgap last year and turned into one of the NHL's best goaltenders, and now they have to make a restricted free agency decision on him, and they've got Jesper waiting in the wings. I don't know how close he is. I'm not close enough to it to know exactly what his timeline is at just age 20 with just 1 year in the AHL, but I would guess within 2 years he'll be competing and probably, putting forth a decent amount of starts for the Wild. So I would get to know the name now, Jesper Wallstedt, the Swede. I bet we're going to get a sweet nickname for him too at some point, Luke.
How valuable is the goalie position compared to other sports? Is it like a starting pitcher, a number one ace in baseball? Is it like the starting quarterback in football? Where do you value? You're my go-to hockey guy, the voice of Golden Gophers hockey. Where do you value that position when it comes to all sports?
Yeah, I would actually say that the goalie is probably diminishing in value a little bit.
Okay.
Like if you look at the top paid players in hockey, they're not goalies. Top paid players in hockey are, the goal scorers, obviously the wingers, the centermen. And the goalies are probably in the middle. If you look at each roster, how much does the goalie make? And they're probably top 10 on each team. I mean, they're paid probably $3 million minimum, up to $6 million, some of them, but goalies are streaky. I would equate a goalie to sort of like, number 3 starter in baseball, someone who might be up and down. And a lot of teams have, like the Vegas Golden Knights just won a Stanley Cup. They cycled through 5 goalies.
Yeah, see, that's wild to me. Yeah. I can comprehend that.
So, I think it's one of those things, though, where if you have one that you can trust, think of it like this, like a kicker, Luke. Like how many kickers in the NFL are really entrenched? Like really, really, like 5, 6?
Yeah, 7.
Those are the guys that those teams know they can trust week in, week out. And that would, I think, be what an elite goaltender would represent to you in hockey.
That's a good breakdown. Yeah, that's a good breakdown. I love that. Let me jump to number 4 on my list here. The Vikings 2022 draft class, it's got a lot of us worried right now, Sam. I mean, we talked about it yesterday on the Mailbag Show with Reggie Wilson. Their top 2 picks of the Kwesi era still buried on the depth chart, already battled a ton of injuries, talking about Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth Jr. This year, they only had 6 picks. They didn't draft until middle of the round of the first round. So things are very murky, I think, when it comes to the Vikings' young core of players. But having said all that, all signs do point to Jordan Addison being an absolute stud when fully healthy and finally out on the field. Bolitnikoff Award winner in 2021 at Pitt, nation's best receiver, not Jamison Williams, not Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson. No, Jordan Addison. He's got the small frame. I get it. But what he lacks in that number 1 alpha size, you get with the cleanest, most polished route running I've seen in this class. Best route runner this class had to offer, which for me is always where you start when evaluating wideout coming into the NFL. And I think the fact that he gets to step into an offense day one with Justin Jefferson on one side, a veteran like Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball, and then one of the best young offensive minds in the league in KOC scheming up plays to get him open. I think not only is Addison going to be a future playmaker in this league, but I think he has one of the cleanest paths to instant success out of all the rookie wideouts, just given, again, the players around him, the coach, and the defense that we already know is going to be giving up a lot of points this year, which means the Vikings will be throwing the rock a lot. Jordan Addison, number 4 on my list.
I noticed on FanDuel today that Jordan Addison is the favorite to lead the league in rookie receiving yards at plus 230. I did think that was interesting. I thought that maybe they'd view him as kind of being blocked out by Jefferson, Hawkinson, Osborne, but no, they've got him as the favorite. Very interesting. My number 4, also a Viking, not Jordan Addison at this point. I'm looking at that 2022 draft class. Maybe you'll consider this a reach, but it's someone who flashed last year. I don't think they established themselves by any means, but they're set for a much bigger role this year. And to me, they really stood out on the practice field a year ago, more so than I can say for a lot of defensive players that have come across. Brian Asamoah. Brian Asamoah plays a position where it is somewhat hard, I think, to stand out in a practice setting, linebacker, right? Because you can't tackle. You're not really guarding a wide receiver, so you can't make interceptions. You can't do any of the stuff in practice that you need to do in a game. And still, his speed, his relentlessness stood out to me. And you're watching him in the preseason, it was evident. He made some big plays in the regular season, including a big strip. I think it was the Cardinals game, maybe the Bears game, where he got the ball out. I think Brian Asamoah is primed to be a staple on this defense going forward. And I think Brian Flores is the right guy to utilize him. Hey, they got the same first name. There's got to be some chemistry there, right? Brian Asamoah, my number 4.
Great pick. I didn't get him on the list, but man, I've talked all offseason. The minute Brian Flores was hired, I have a lot of high expectations. I'm super excited to see Brian Asamoah in this aggressive attacking defense, especially in the front seven. He was a phenomenal blitzer over at Oklahoma. And again, like you mentioned, now with Kendricks gone, Jordan Hicks getting older, he's primed up for a clear path to get a lot of playing time this year. Number 3 on my list, it wasn't long ago, Sam, the Minnesota Twins lived and died through their farm system. I mean, they were constantly picking in the top 10. They would draft and develop their own, and that's just how they built their best teams, knowing, hey, we can't compete with the money the Yankees and the Dodgers are spending every year. And in last year's draft, they were able to, in my opinion, steal one of the best players in the entire class. Brooks Lee, the shortstop from Cal Poly with the 8th overall pick. Even though everyone said this dude is somehow a consensus top 3 to 5 pick, somehow he falls all the way in their lap at number 8. This dude, he could have even went in the first round coming out of high school, but he wanted to go play for his dad, who's the head coach at Cal Poly. He ripped it up there for a few seasons. Now he's in the Twin system, and everything we've seen from this guy is on track to become the next star in the Twins lineup, possibly as early as next year. Switch hitter, elite bat skills. His strikeout rate right now in the minor, Sam, 11%. This dude only strikes out once every 10 at-bats, which is about as elite as it comes. Great power from both sides of the plate, can slap the ball around all over the field. And on top of that, he's got the huge Gold Glove potential, whether that's at shortstop or if the Twins want to move him around at third base sometime down the road as well, that's fine too. Brooks Lee ranked as the 20th best prospect in the entire MLB right now. And that just gives the Twins yet another young and up-and-coming infielder they can bank on for the future to be a major contributor. Help this team get back to their successful ways again, both offensively and defensively. Brooks Lee coming in at number 3 on my list.
We're at the halfway point of our top 5s. I'll give my number 3, and then we'll move forward after I tell you that FanDuel Sportsbook brings you today's show, and they're bringing you all the lines from Major League Baseball this summer. It's run lines, it's money lines, and hey, you can also bet on league winners, division winners, World Series winners, and this surprises me, Luke. The Twins have lost the lead in the AL Central, yet they are still fairly heavy favorites to win the division. They're minus 190 to win the Central right now.
190?
Guardians, 190. Wow. Guardians are plus 165. So I thought, hey, maybe you can buy the dip. Maybe you can get some plus money on the Twins to win the Central. Nope. Still got to pay up minus 190 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Those lines and so many more. And great promotions like the No Sweat First Bet. New customers get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Check out FanDuel.com/lockedon or download the app to get started today. You get paid instantly when you win. Hundreds of ways to wager. A great way to bet Major League Baseball, an official partner of FanDuel Sportsbook. All right. We're in lockstep, Luke. My number 3 is also Brooks Lee. Shortstop for now. I do wonder what his future position is because, right, they signed Correa to this 6-year deal, and they're kind of regretting it right now. But they've moved Royce Lewis from short to third. Okay. So is Brooks Lee future second baseman maybe, the post-Jorge Polanco era? I have noticed, too, the Twins they're kind of positionless. All their guys play everywhere. They play first. They play outfield. He might, just be kind of a super utility in the outfield, but he can hit. He can make contact. Lord knows the Twins need that. 276 average right now at the AA level. And that's when it gets real, Luke. That's when it gets real. If you're at AA, you are not far from a call-up. And he has held his own at that level. Probably will do a stint in AAA, I would assume, get him in St. Paul, and then maybe shuttle him back and forth a little bit. from St. Paul to Target Field. Only 22. Future is bright. And the middle infield for the Twins, Lewis, potentially Lee, maybe Correa wakes up someday. And Luis Arraez. Oh, no, we don't have Luis Arraez. But Brooks Lee. Brooks Lee. Maybe he's the next Arraez. Number 3 on my list.
What's Carlos Correa's trade value at this point? I mean, can you get a stud number 1 pitcher? Can you get an ace?
No. I think, if he had just struggled without the injury concerns all offseason and the 2 deals that fell through.
He's got the pedigree and resume that
maybe it'd be a little different. But I think when you consider both of those facts, that he's struggling so mightily and he's had that injury stuff, I think the teams would probably balk a little bit. Although, with that contract does follow him, it's a pretty friendly contract. I will say that. Like 6 years, they got him at value. It's a little friendlier than it would have been, but it still is. There's a lot left on it, and if he's a diminishing asset, it's probably not a great time.
All right, well, that's depressing. Let's move on to my number 2 on the list. Maybe the biggest riser on my list when you just look at what this kid's done the last 6 months or so. He was already a top 5 prospect for the Wild going into 2022, but there was a run at the end of the season, not only helping the Gophers dominate in the Frozen Four, but then just to see him a few days after the national championship, he comes in, helps the Wild against the Dallas Stars in the playoffs, even makes a few wild plays in the process. At just 20 years old, mind you, defenseman Brock Faber from your Minnesota Golden Gophers quickly has become one of the hottest names in the league when it comes to NHL prospects. I mentioned Brooks Lee is the 20th ranked prospect in baseball. Well, Faber, he's now ranked the 15th best prospect in the NHL. And as much as it stung trading away Kevin Fiala to the Kings, for the Wild to get a kid like Faber, who already looks so impressive, and another first-round pick in the process, which they used on Liam Ogren, who's currently the team's number 3 prospect, by the way, that was a massive swing in not just getting younger and clearing some cap space, but getting 2 young studs in the mix for the future. And it all starts, though, with Brock Faber. Already showed signs of promise for things to come and make some serious noise, I think, in 2023. Number 2 on my list.
Yeah, and he unfortunately didn't make my list, but I thought long and hard about it. He's not going to blow you away offensively. He's kind of a defensive-minded defenseman. I know that we boo the heck out of Ryan Suter now. We don't like Ryan Suter anymore. But I think that his ceiling is kind of that type of defenseman who is so reliable, so instinctual, always makes the right play, does all the little things right. You got to have an appreciation for the hockey nuances to appreciate Brock Faber, because he's not going to light up the stat sheet, but he's going to make a lot of big impact plays like we saw in that overtime against Dallas in game 1. He dives and blocks the game-winning goal, and then the Wild won that game. Made a big impact right away. How crazy is it that he goes right out of college and has an impact in the playoffs at the NHL level? Yeah, that was really, really cool. That's a good one, Luke. And I will throw this in as an honorable mention. Oliver Moore, drafted last night by the Blackhawks. Unfortunately, not the Wild. He's going to play for the Gophers this year. Might just be a one and done. Hopefully a couple of years, but that's a name to watch for. That'll be at least on our radar for a little bit before he goes to the hated Blackhawks, and then we can't cheer for him anymore. All right, number 2 on my list. He was also on your list. It's Jordan Addison. You laid out all the reasoning why, and I'm just forecasting they probably pay Jefferson. We hope they pay Hawkinson. That's a lot of money to devote. I'm guessing they won't have money for KJ Osborne, and then the domino effect there. Jordan Addison next year becomes your wide receiver 2. He'll get the target share, and he'll be right there next to Justin Jefferson on every snap of the game. And I think he's going to put up numbers. And you're right, the precise, crisp route running that this coaching staff fell in love with. I think his ceiling is super duper high. Mentioned that he is still the odds-on favorite on FanDuel to lead the league in rookie receiving. So Jordan Addison, number 2, that's a good one.
All right, drum roll, please. Number 1 on my list. You could get technical here, Sam. You could argue Brooks Lee is technically a higher prospect on the MLB rankings than this guy, but I don't care. Royce Lewis was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. And if it weren't for the injury last year, this dude would be a lot higher than number 2 where he is right now on the MLB Top 100. Everything we've seen from him early on tells us he's primed to become one of the Twins' best players for the next 5-10 years, the way he's smashing the ball around the field right now. Now that he's finally got his feet underneath him, he's healthy, he's stringing some momentum together, and he's only going to get better and better. He's only 24 years old. Small sample size, yes, but easily the Twins' best hitter right now in the lineup, consistently night in and night out. And to think we sit here today, Sam, and the Twins have, as you mentioned, Carlos Correa, Royce Lewis, and Brooks Lee in the system, 3 bona fide, legitimate playmaking shortstops at their core. It's all of a sudden an embarrassment of riches of infield talent and a great problem to have for Rocco Baldelli and the Twins organization. Royce Lewis, #1 prospect in Minnesota sports as we sit here today, and who I think has the highest upside when it comes to becoming a legitimate superstar of anyone on this list.
Yeah, and again, if we're hating on Correa, his ascension is another reason why that contract's going to look
Tough
bad
to swallow.
if Correa doesn't come around. I was never on the Correa train. I think I can pat myself on the back for that one, but yeah, Royce Lewis also not my #1, Luke. I thought we would have more differences on our list, but I think we had 4 in common. Royce Lewis also my #1, and what's crazy is you look at his baseball reference page. There's a huge gap. 2017, 2018, 2019, and then nothing for 3 years. He basically took 3 years off, injuries, pandemic, then he got hurt again in 2022. So he's doing this. He's hitting 318 for a struggling Twins team with like barely any baseball played in the last 4 years. And this is what he's doing. He's 24. He's still going to get better. He's like shaking the rust off right now from years of inactivity, and he still is performing at a high level. He just he looks big in the batter's box. He's formidable. He's intimidating. He's fast, fun to watch. It's the kind of player that the Twins need more of because they are kind of a tire fire right now. But Royce Lewis gives us hope. Brooks Lee gives us hope. Matt Wallner gives us hope. Jose Miranda, maybe the future's bright for the Twins offensively, because right now they are stuck in a rut. Those are the lists, the top 5 future superstars in Minnesota sports. Great job, Luke, as always, at Luke_Spinman on Twitter. Comment below. What do you think of the lists? Who did we leave out? Didn't have any Timberwolves on either of our lists, Luke, and I think that that's valid. It's tough to really buy into second-round picks like Leonard Miller. Wendell Moore didn't do anything last year. He was the first-round pick a year ago, and they traded Walker Kessler. So I think we were justified in that. Next week, we'll have a new fun list on Minnesota Sports Rankum. He's Luke. I'm Sam Ekstrom. We'll talk to you on the Minnesota football party a little later today. For now, so long.